So this is a bit of a humdinger of a story and all over the place, with many characters, twists and turns. I've referred to the court documents to tell the story as it was the easiest. I hope you can all follow. I may warn you, it's like a badly written thriller, but because it's all true, well, it makes it compelling. As they say here, only in Ireland. Oh, and I hope the song Lying Eyes by the Eagles is not stuck in your heads like it has been for me, for days now. So sick of it. I had to play the song to try and get rid of it out of my head. On the 26th of September 2006, Gardaí received a call to a break-in at a business premises at Westgate Business Park in Ennis, County Clare. The office belonged to a building company called Downes and Howard, which mainly dealt with property investments. The company was owned by a local man, PJ Howard, and his sons, and it was well known that he may have amassed a small fortune in property, and the idea there might be a sum of money on the premises wasn't beyond belief. The call was not at all unusual. Robberies in rural Ireland was unfortunately a commonplace, but when the Gardaí arrived they noticed that the crime scene was unusual. There was none of the common signs of a robbery. There was no smashed in doors or popped locks or broken windows. The locks of the office were opened with keys and the alarm was deactivated by code the night before at 9:24 p.m. A laptop, a CPU of a desktop computer, and some odds and ends including computer cables and a poster of Old Irish Money, which is weird. The safe in the office was untouched, which was even weirder. The CCTV of the business park had shown a car entering at around the time the alarm had been disabled, but it didn't show who was in the car or where the car had gone. The only people that had keys to the office were the people that worked there, PJ, his sons and long-term partner Sharon Collins, a handyman and a cleaner. While all this was going on, PJ and Sharon had been on holidays in Spain, where PJ spent the majority of his time, as it was his sons that mainly ran his business. Later that same evening of the robbery, Gardaí received a phone call from Robert Howard, one of the sons, saying that a strange man had turned up at his house demanding money. What had started off as a simple robbery call took a very strange twist, and from that point on, one of the most bizarre stories in Irish criminal history played out. Just days after the robbery, Issam Eid, an Egyptian national with an address in Las Vegas of all places. Yes, we are going semi-international in this case. He was arrested in Ennis along with his wife Teresa Engel, an American who was one of Eid's wives. Robert would say that it was Eid who called to his house demanding money. Eid had told him that there was a contract out on his life and the lives of his father and brother, and that if he handed over €100,000, then the hit would be called off. Robert was having none of this, and rather than submitting to Eid's demands, he rang the Gardaí and Eid was taken into custody quickly. Teresa, Eid's wife, was also arrested, and she shrugged off any loyalty and was more than happy to tell the Gardaí everything, and what a story it was. Over the next few months, with cooperation from Interpol and the FBI, computers were seized and retrieved from dump sites in both the US and Ireland. When they were analysed, the internet browsing history, as well as a series of emails, were recovered. On the 26th of February 2007, the partner of PJ, Sharon Collins, and supposed quote-unquote surrogate mother to his two grown sons, was arrested on foot of information gleaned from two gateway computers, recovered in the course of an FBI investigation into Eid, which revealed a series of emails between two people, where someone was using the address lyingeyes98@yahoo.ie and had gone about arranging the contract killing of the Howard men. The emails also mentioned a FedEx parcel sent to a Las Vegas address containing the down payment of €15,000 for the hit, and when the Gardaí looked, Sharon had indeed made withdrawals from her credit union account and bank to the amount of €15,000. But our lovely Sharon totally denied that she had any contact with Eid. She admitted she sent the money, but insisted that it was because she was being blackmailed, possibly by a woman she had met online by the name of Maria Marconi. PJ Howard wrote to the DPP at the time and asked that no charges be preferred against Sharon, as there was no way that she had anything to do with the murder plot, and he wasn't the only person to contact the DPP in relation to the case. Sharon Collins took it upon herself to write to them 3 times. She wanted to lay out her case to them. The first letter ran 21 pages long. I'm already feeling sorry for the prosecutor. It mainly detailed her life. She told him how she was married at the age of 19 and had 2 sons, but then had separated and later divorced from her husband. She met PJ Howard in November 1998, and she and her 2 sons had moved in before Christmas. This, to me, already is a red flag. They lived together as man and wife, but never married, because PJ's concerns about his sons inheriting his business and fortune. At least he had a bit of cop on, to protect his money. In Ireland, a spouse is automatically entitled to 1/3 of an estate, no matter what a will might say, and same goes for a prenup, so there is no way to disinherit a wife or husband. Sharon was putting the pressure on, so to appease her, PJ thought that they might have a church wedding, as Sharon's first marriage had been annulled before their divorce, and PJ was a widower. But they were warned that this could even form a basis of a claim against PJ's estate. So Sharon settled for vows exchanged by the 2 of them in a church in Italy with no officiant, and signed a document in their solicitor's office, noting that they were aware that this was not a legal marriage and was to have no legal effect. The 2, however, acted as husband and wife and threw a reception party for close friends and family when they got home from Italy. The people that attended were led to believe by Sharon that they did actually get married. PJ and Sharon did get on pretty well most of the time, but had quote-unquote abrasive personalities, and that they had their disagreements. Sharon said in December 2005 she had come into contact with a woman online, Maria Marconi, and that Sharon had told her all about the various arguments in her and PJ's relationship. They had met online when Sharon filled out a pop-up form in her internet browser about working from home. After signing up for that, she got lots of other emails about much the same thing and had been bombarded, but one email stuck out, an offer from a best-selling author to help her write a novel. Again, Sharon filled out the form and sent it back. Soon after, she was contacted by Maria Marconi, who said she was to be her mentor. Over time, Sharon and Maria developed a friendship of sorts, and Sharon began divulging more and more personal information to her. Sharon said she had not told PJ about her because she wanted to see how things went before she mentioned anything about her writing a book. In the meantime, she had a friendship and found the writing exercises therapeutic. Sharon said in the letter to the DPP that in and around April 2006, she and PJ had argued, and she had fired off an email to Maria, calling him all sorts of names and saying that she hated him. Sharon also described how, in June 2007, she met Maria Marconi when she took a holiday to Ireland. She was a woman in her late 40s with straight brown hair, sallow skin, and about average height. They travelled all around the scenic areas of Clare together. Sharon also let her use a computer in PJ's office and a laptop at Ballybeg House. The next month, Maria got in contact to say that her house had been robbed and her laptop had been stolen. This is when Sharon began to receive strange emails. They were from a man who said he'd kill PJ and his sons for €100,000, or failing that, he'd kill them if she didn't pay. The man, she said, had all sorts of details about her life, and she was frightened. Then she was told she had to hand over €20,000 to prevent the letter she had sent to Maria Marconi being sent to PJ. She got phone calls and emails demanding the money, and eventually she decided to send the money to try and make the problem go away. The evening after she sent the money, the 16th of August 2007, she went to Spain hoping that it was over, but instead she got phone calls and emails demanding more money from her. She went to an internet cafe to email Maria, but when she logged in, she discovered all her emails and contacts had been deleted from the account. When she found out that PJ's office had been broken into and that the computers were stolen, she remembered that her password was saved to one of the computers and thought that maybe that was how her emails had been deleted. She told the DPP also that when she had been brought in to speak to the Gardaí, they had read emails that they said were from her to a man named Tony. She told them she recognised parts of the emails and that some of what she had written to Maria might have been lifted word for word and had been added to make it look like Sharon herself was conspiring to have the Howard men murdered. Sharon's next two letters were much shorter, coming in at only 7 and 6 pages long, respectively. She said in the letters that she wouldn't have used her real name, her computer from home, or the computer at Howard's office. She wouldn't have used easily traceable money or given personal information. All this, she said, added up to the fact that it was impossible that she could have committed this crime. All that had happened was that she was stupid. She was duped and blackmailed, and she should have come forward about it much sooner and told the truth. She should have told PJ all about it when it happened. She also stated that she had nothing to gain by the Howard's murders. She was not named in any will and would have had no claim on PJ's estate as they were not married. If anything, having PJ killed would mean that her cash cow would be gone. She begged the DPP not to lay charges and to believe her, that she had been stupid, but that she had not set out to kill. The DPP did not listen to either PJ or Sharon, and on the 26th of June 2007, the District Court sat in Kilkee, County Clare. This court is a small court. In fact, it only sits 9 times a year. But this morning it was full to capacity with photographers and journalists. Sharon, 44, was to appear before the court. Not only that, it was reported that an Egyptian national with an address in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA, was also appearing in Ennis Court, charged with trying to extort €100,000, robbery and handling stolen goods. But those charges were dropped that morning, and as he'd left the courtroom, he was immediately rearrested for conspiracy to murder. Eid was brought by the Gardaí to Kilkee to face these charges alongside Sharon. The two were brought before the court and officially charged with conspiracy to kill PJ Howard and his 2 sons, Robert and Niall. This would be the first time that Sharon and Eid would meet. Sharon and Eid were remanded in custody, but Sharon would later seek and be granted bail at the High Court. She was told not to contact PJ, surrender her passport and move out of Ballybeg House. Both were also granted legal aid. The trial of both Sharon and Eid began on Wednesday the 21st of May 2008 at the Four Courts in Dublin. 8 men and 4 women were selected as the jury. The actual trial itself started the following morning. The case was to be heard in courtroom 16, and on the morning 3 legal teams arrived in the tiny courtroom. Each team had 3 members in it. This amount of representatives for Sharon, Eid and the prosecution showed the complexity of the case. Take note that each of the accused were granted free legal aid, and so the cost of the case was falling on the state, which in turn cost the taxpayer. So with 12 solicitors, the accused, Gardaí involved in the case, family members and press, the courtroom was packed to the gills and the judge was not a happy bunny. So the following week the case was moved to a much bigger venue. Sharon faced 3 charges of conspiracy to murder and faced another 3 charges of soliciting Eid to murder the 3 men. Eid was recharged with making an unwarranted demand for €100,000 from Robert Howard, trespassing at the Howard's business premises, theft and handling stolen goods. The 2 of them pleaded not guilty to each of the charges. The opening statements from the prosecution lasted a whopping 2.5 hours. The prosecution introduced the Howards to the jury. PJ was a widower since 2003, but had been separated from his wife prior to her death. Niall and Robert were also introduced to the jury. They were property developers and worked the business with their father in Kilkee, County Clare. Then Sharon was mentioned as PJ's long-term partner, and who was a good few years younger than PJ. She was divorced and had 2 sons of her own. The jury were told how the investigating officers of the case had gathered extensive information and evidence, which included help from the FBI in America, as they were conducting their own investigation into Eid for similar charges. So the following is how it went down according to the prosecution. Eid going by the name Tony Luciano. was contacted by Sharon to murder the Howard men. She had used an email, lyingeyes98@yahoo.ie, which she used on the computers in both the offices of the Howards' businesses, where she worked part-time as an administrator, and the home she shared with PJ. Sharon had also obtained a proxy marriage certificate from Mexico for herself and PJ, which she paid €1,000 for. This was of course without PJ's knowledge, and she used this to apply and receive an Irish passport in the name Sharon Howard. Sharon had posted keys of the Howard's business offices to Ede, and he used these to gain access to steal the computers that had evidence of Sharon's contact with him. Along with the keys, she sent him photographs and money. Robert had gone to the offices of his family business and noticed that the door was unlocked and the alarm was no longer set. He saw that 2 computers were missing. Later that night, around 10:30 p.m, he got a phone call at home from a man he didn't know, saying, "I heard you lost a few computers." He told him he had, and the man said he would call around. 5 minutes later, there was a knock on the door. When Robert opened it, he found a man calling himself Tony, standing there with one of the computers. Robert took the computer, went into the house and told his brother Niall, who was also in the house, to ring the Gardaí. When Robert returned to the front door, where Tony was still standing, Tony told Robert that he had been hired to kill him, Niall and their father PJ for €130,000. But Tony told him he didn't want to carry out the hit, which was good news for the Howard men, as long as they were willing to pay him €100,000 to buy out the contract. Such a good deal. Tony showed Robert photographs he had of the Howards and a piece of paper and various directions to the various houses they lived in. Robert at this stage was a little freaked and hoping that the Gardaí would arrive soon before Tony tried to leave, which he did. Robert ended up following Tony but lost him at the crossroads. Later, at around 12:30 a.m, Robert received another phone call from Tony, asking if he had started to get the money together, but there was a number of other calls the next day along the same lines. They made plans to meet at a hotel in Ennis for Robert to hand over the money. Of course, Robert told the Gardaí all about this. On the evening of the 27th of September 2006, Robert went to the hotel bar. He got another call telling him to meet a woman near the hotel bathrooms, that she would be collecting the money from him. This woman was Teresa Engel, Ede's wife. When he got to the bathrooms, a woman asked him if he had the envelope, and just then a plainclothes guard passed them and the woman took off without the money. When the undercover female guard followed Teresa, she was seen talking to a man outside the hotel. They both went their separate ways, the man heading to a pub across the road from the hotel. The Gardaí approached the man and arrested him there and then. This man was Ede, aka Tony. Teresa was arrested in the car park of the hotel. PJ stood by Sharon all through the investigation, the arrest and the trial. When he was on the stand, he said he had no idea why Sharon would do any of this. He said she wasn't a greedy woman, she never asked him for anything, and that she had cared for him when he was ill. He told the court that just a few days after the break-in at the office, Sharon had told him how she was being blackmailed by a woman named Maria Marconi. He said that he had sent Sharon over to Las Vegas with instructions to hiring a private investigator to try and find this Maria Marconi, but she had been unsuccessful in finding her. PJ also said that he did not purchase the 2 flights from Las Vegas to Shannon Airport that appeared on his American Express credit card, and these flights matched up with flights Ede and Teresa had taken. He said Sharon had his credit card details, and in fact she ensured that bill was paid, but she kept the details in her purse, which was stolen in Spain in August or September of 2006. He believed the woman that stole the purse was Teresa Engel. After PJ finished his testimony, he left the stand and crossed the courtroom, where he gave Sharon a kiss on the lips. This caused a sensation amongst the media. He left the courtroom and did not attend the rest of the trial. On Thursday, the 12th of June, Teresa Engel took to the stand, and it was established that she had been granted immunity for her testimony. They went through her background, and she had met Ede in 2003 or 2004 at a casino in Detroit near where she lived at the time. In June 2006, she moved to Las Vegas to live with Eid, and they got married. She, Eid, and another woman named Lisa all lived together. Lisa was Eid's first wife. She was asked if she had ever been to Ireland before, and she said she had. She said Eid had sent her there after Eid had received emails from a woman asking for 3 men to be murdered. She recalled that a payment of about €15,000 in cash had been delivered to the house by FedEx. Teresa went to Ireland and met up in Ennis with a friend of Eid's named Ash, who was to break into the Howard's office and poison the alcohol, which in turn would kill the 2 Howard sons. But Ash decided this would not work and left. When the FBI were investigating Eid over fraud and extortion in the States, they had found evidence of the manufacturing of ricin in the house that Eid lived in, and so this information was given in court in Ireland. The fraud and extortion in this case in the US was similar to the one in Ireland involving Sharon. Eid and Teresa had told a woman that her partner's ex had taken out a hit on her and that she'd be killed if she didn't send Eid $20,000. Obviously, rather than pay out the money to these people, she went to the cops. It turned out the ex-girlfriend had paid out $17,000 after finding Eid on the Hitman for Hire website that he had set up. To this charge, Teresa pleaded guilty and was eventually, in 2008, sentenced to 8 months in prison. The next part of this story is another humdinger, as it involves the popular radio show personality Jerry Ryan, who unfortunately is no longer with us, but anyone Irish would have known him, and the producer of his show, Siobhan Hoff. You see, our Sharon had wrote an email to the show outlining her relationship with PJ. This email was only partially recovered, and so they brought Jerry Ryan and Siobhan Hoff to the stand, but they stated they get over 2,000 emails a month, and neither of them remember seeing the email. In the email, it stated that PJ visited prostitutes and what Sharon would call transvestites, and had asked her to do things that she was uncomfortable with sexually. She went on to say that he suffered terrible moods if he didn't get his own way with things, and that she couldn't tolerate it anymore, but that she was afraid to leave. I think she didn't want to give up the lifestyle she was used to, but hey, that's just me, forever cynical. She said she was writing to the show to possibly give herself the push she needed to make the break. The implications in this email was that they were either true and Sharon was unhappy in her relationship, which provided a motive for murder, or Sharon was lying and wasn't above sullying her partner's reputation in an attempt to gain sympathy for herself. Maybe Sharon wasn't what she seemed. In his summing up, the prosecution would say that it was entirely unnecessary and irrelevant to have Jerry Ryan to come in, and that it was a stunt for Sharon to get more attention. On the 1st of July, the day had finally come that everyone had been waiting on. Sharon was the next up in the witness box. She swanned around the forecourts, smartly dressed, confident and self-assured looking. Her examination with her own solicitor went smoothly in the witness box. She denied all allegations, and her questioning only lasted 10 minutes. Next up was the prosecution to cross-examine Sharon. Of course, everything that was put to her was denied. How she organised the break-in at the Howard's office, how she paid the down payment of €15,000 for the hit, and claiming it was the money to pay the blackmailer. How the Lying Eyes 98 email address didn't belong to her. She was accused of making up the person Maria Marconi to cover her tracks. She claimed that the phone calls she exchanged was with a woman and not a man. Sharon remained cool and collective during the cross-examination. She made sure to smile at the jury and played all innocent, and that she did not know who Eid was or who the emails had belonged to. The next day, however, Sharon was a different woman in the court. She was drawn and lacked the confidence she had shown the previous day. The prosecution grilled her and basically went through her for a shortcut. Sharon didn't have any answers to the questions about using the Lying Eyes account to the hitman and then signing out and using her own personal email address within a few minutes from the same computer. She couldn't answer to the searches on her laptop from Ballybeg House about inheritance, mortgages and women's aid. How the tracking number for the €15,000 was used minutes after interactions between the Lying Eyes 98 and the Hitman account. She was also asked what she hoped to achieve by sending letters to the DPP against her solicitor's advice. Sharon said she'd been trying to put her side of the story across, but the prosecution asserted that she was trying to manipulate the DPP, as she was the jury and others around her. Sharon cracked under the pressure and started to cry. The judge offered her a break, but she chose to carry on. Finally, just before lunch, she was finished in the stand. Eid did not take the stand, but statements were read out in court. He told Gardaí that he was having an affair, or had an affair for a number of years with Sharon, but he went back on this. He said he never met Sharon or spoken to her, or had emails from her, or didn't know any of the Howard men. He said he never got photographs of the Howards and that he never manufactured ricin or smuggled it into the country. He was a hard-working man, and furthermore, who would agree to kill an entire family for such a small sum of money? Closing statements began on the 4th of July with the prosecution. It was highlighted that Sharon was linked to the 3 computers used in setting up the Lying Eyes account and arranging the FedEx shipment of €15,000 to Las Vegas. They said the activities on the Lying Eyes account could be linked in time to the internet searches made by Sharon and her logging onto her own personal email account. Phone logs linked Sharon's mobile phone and house landline to calls made to Eid. Plane tickets were purchased for Eid and Teresa on PJ Howard's credit card. The language in the emails in the Hitman mirrored that used by Sharon in letters to the DPP. There was absolutely no trace of this mysterious Maria Marconi. Keys and pictures of the Howards had been sent to the States to access their business premises. Finally, the prosecution stated that Sharon and Eid were not only fools, but dangerous fools. Sharon's defence would say the Gardaí were blinkered in their investigation and that they only looked in their client's direction for evidence to make her look guilty. There was phone data that was never combed through, phone records that showed phone calls from Ballybeg House while Sharon and PJ were away. They were never looked into, despite that it would seem that someone else was in the house. They said there were calls from the Howard offices to Sharon's phone when she was supposedly there, according to the computer data that had been collected. No one had bothered to go through all these phone records and all these computer logs, and if they had, it would have shown up many holes in the state's case. They also stated that Sharon took to the stand and not only humiliated herself but her own family. And why would she do that unless she was innocent? The defence was grasping at straws at this stage, I think. Eid's defence were next to do their closing. They said the whole affair had been a shakedown and not a murder plot. They questioned the reliability of the identity parade that had been held when Robert and Niall Howard had attended, and identified Eid as the man that called to the house. They said no attempt was made to identify this Tony Luciano. He called the Hitman for Hire website a clownish attempt, one that only a fool would be duped by, and one that was only ever intended to dupe fools. Sharon was the state's real target, and that his client was being brought along for the ride to connect all the dots. They stated that there was never absolute proof that their client ever intended to kill the Howard men. By the afternoon of Friday the 4th of July, the judge began his own summing up. It continued into the next Monday, and all in all it would take a total of 6 hours. When he finally finished, the 8 men and 4 women retired to deliberate. I could go into further details of the court case, but it just went on, and each counsel had separate requisitions put forward to the judge for the jury. It was so nitpicky, I don't want to bore you all with it. Put it this way, every angle was considered, and they all got their spoken on how the jury were to see the case. The jury had to be retired to a hotel that night, and the next morning the judge recharged the jury in the matters brought up the afternoon before, and deliberations began again. After another long day, the jury were sent back to their hotel, and in a stereotypical Irish fashion, told not to deliberate further, but to relax and have a drink because they deserved it. As an Irish person, I know we wouldn't need to be told this. 2 free nights in a hotel, all costs paid by the state. You can be sure they made the most of it. On the 3rd day, finally, a decision would be made. Early afternoon, the jury filed into the courtroom and delivered their verdict on 7 charges. Sharon had been found guilty of 3 charges relating to the soliciting the murder of the 3 Howard men, PJ, Robert and Niall. Eid had been found guilty of charges relating to demanding €100,000 from Robert to cancel the contract of killing all 3 of them, and not guilty of the robbery of the Howard offices. Sharon broke down in tears as the jury returned to deliberate further on the outstanding charges. By 3 p.m. the jury returned and found her guilty of the conspiracy to murder counts. By 6 p.m. they returned and ultimately could not reach a decision regarding the guilt or innocence of Eid on those counts. Both were remanded in custody to await sentencing, and for the first time Sharon was going to spend time in prison. On Monday the 5th of November, Sharon and Eid appeared in court for sentencing, and Sharon continued to protest her innocence as she stood before the judge once more. Character references were put forward on her behalf. The Bishop of Killaloe, the Mayor of Venice and a local TD, which is a politician. PJ also addressed the judge in a victim impact statement and said that he still supported Sharon and that he still didn't believe that she could have plotted to kill him in that way. Oh, total simp. It was taken into account that Sharon had no previous record, but obviously it wasn't taken into account that she never admitted to her guilt when sentencing. She was sentenced to 6 years in total and would serve 4 years and 9 months. Eid was sentenced to 6 years in total also and took his sentencing all in his stride. I suppose compared to US prisons, ours are like a holiday camp. It was backdated to 2006. Sharon was returned to her room in the Doka Women's Centre, which is the women's prison within Mountjoy Prison in Dublin. Eid was returned to his prison, I presume also in Mountjoy. In 2010, Sharon's appeal against her conviction made its way to court. The state decided in the end not to stand over the conspiracy convictions, given that Eid had not been convicted of this charge, and of course it takes 2. But they would stand over the convictions of soliciting murder. Eid also appealed and it was denied, as his sentencing was on the low end of demanding money with menace, and that it was a punishment that fit his crime. Sharon's appeal was fully dismissed in October 2011. PJ had reportedly spent close to €200,000 on a private investigator trying to gather new evidence to use in the appeal, to clear Sharon's name, to no avail. I'll say it again, what a simp. In September 2012, Sharon was released, and in 2015 Sharon gave an interview to the Irish Independent newspaper after she moved to Belfast, Northern Ireland. She still maintained her innocence and said she considered writing a book to put out her side of the story, but decided to keep a low profile and wanted to try and keep living a quiet life. She had trained in sport massage therapy while in prison. She is also a professional dog walker. Oh, and loves salsa dancing. She only intended to stay in Belfast for a short while, but she made such good friends up there she decided to stay. PJ stood by her all the time she was in prison, but after she got out the relationship fizzled out and they both went their own way. PJ went to Spain to lick his wounds and to this day spends most of his time there, while his 2 sons still manage a thriving business despite everything that went on. In 2016, Eid gave an interview to the Sunday World newspaper. He returned to his native Egypt, where he is now a cattle farmer, and had some harsh words for Sharon. He spoke of her statement, "Everyone deserves a second chance," saying that applies only to people that admit that what they did. Eid was extradited back to the States while in custody, as he faced charges of extortion, and once he had served his time in the US, he attempted to put his life back together. He did become ill, and after no one came to visit him in hospital, he realised his life in the US was over, after spending 32 years there, and he returned to his native Egypt. It's hard to believe that Sharon fell for this scam. She would have considered herself as intelligent and a computer expert, having taken a course in 1982. Yeah, that doesn't make sense. But the computers of 2006 were a different kettle of fish. Metadata, cell data, browsing history, and so on were just about to become mainstream. Nowadays, we nearly all know that data is kept and our every movement can be traced, and yet we still have twats that make these mistakes and leave a treasure trove of evidence. So I suppose we can't be too hard on Sharon for her stupidity. I don't really know how to sum up our Sharon. Maybe she was a bored housewife getting a kick out of it, until it seemed like it really might happen. That she really might have ended up in possession of a multi-million euro property portfolio. Eid said he regretted not getting rid of the computers and carrying out the hit, like he was supposed to. And if he had, maybe they'd all have gotten away with it. To me, this is sickening. 3 innocent men that worked so hard for what they have, and this man Eid, even to this day, thinking of himself. As for Sharon, selfish to the end, because she never admitted to what she did. My saying PJ was a simp is not a bad thing. This was the man in love that gave Sharon everything except a ring on her finger, because he wanted to protect what he had built for his sons. So he may have been a simp when it came to Sharon, but when it came to protecting himself and his family, he was the utmost alpha. So PJ, you did good, and I hope you are very happy wherever you are, and that you did find love again. I wish you nothing but love, because you are the victim in all this, and you and your sons barely got away with your lives.